All right, USA and Canada notes. The essential question for this: how do physical and environmental features impact where and how people live? This will be the basis for our learning target for much of this first part of our USA and Canada unit. First, I want to look over a very good teacher joke here with this cartoon. Look this over. Bobby has 4 dimes. Amy has 30 pennies. Which child has more money? Bobby. It's the correct answer. How do you know? Show your thinking. And as you can tell, the person is thinking, Bobby, for the correct answer. All right, into the actual notes. The USA has 4 main regions. The first of those regions is the West, which makes up New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, and westward, with along the Pacific Ocean over here. You have Washington, Oregon, and California, wrapping down towards Mexico, Arizona. Utah, Nevada, and Idaho as well make up the West. Then you have the Midwest, much of the part of the country that borders Minnesota. We have Wisconsin to our east, North Dakota, South Dakota to our west, Iowa to our south, and then a few other states around here as well. Then we have the South, which makes up Texas, over to Florida, up to Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, that area. And then we have the Northeast, New York, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Maine, some of those states up in the Northeast. So the 4 main regions of the USA: West, South, Midwest, and Northeast. Canada also has 4 main regions. Instead of states, Canada has what's called provinces. The Canadian North is the first region. That's way up here with these 3, with Nunavut, Northwest Territories, and the Yukon Territories. The western provinces are then to the western part of the country. That makes up British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. The other 2 regions, the heartland, consist of the provinces of Ontario, which is the most populated of the Canadian provinces. Major city of Toronto is in Ontario. Quebec. And then the eastern provinces are made up of Newfoundland and Labrador, that's 1 province. Prince Edward Island, labeled PEI right here. Nova Scotia, and then finally New Brunswick. To get to the 2.0 or the partially meets for the vocabulary terms for this unit, these are the words that you'll need to know. The first one is desertification. This is the process of a dry area becoming a desert. So once an area goes through desertification and it becomes a desert, there is no turning back. And you're seeing this in parts of our country, Arizona, Nevada, Southern California. You're seeing this desertification process taking place where there is areas that are turning into a desert, and there's really no turning back once you become a desert. Desertification. Next, why is desertification a bad thing? You can see, bad. Write your answers in there. Next slide. We have urban and rural. Urban are areas with high populations or major cities, and rural, those are areas with lower populations. And there really is no exact way to decide between the two. It just kind of happens. Like, we can all agree that Minneapolis and St. Paul is an urban area. And then as you start to go north, you have some of the suburbs like Maple Grove. Then you get into Rogers, Elk River. Now you're starting to get into more rural areas. You hit Zimmerman, Princeton, and then Malacca. You're pretty much starting to hit into the rural part of the state. And so urban areas with high populations, so major cities, and then rural is going to be areas with lower populations. Again, urban would be like Minneapolis and St. Paul. Rural, you're getting pretty rural when you get out to Princeton, up to Malacca, Onamia, going north that way. Next, we have migration. Migration is the movement from one place to another. Okay, that can be emigration, which is people exiting a country, or it can be immigration, which is people coming into a country. But we're focusing just on migration in general, which is the movement from one place to another. People can be pushed away from their homes. It could be because of maybe natural resources. It can be because of people are fleeing countries because of their government. Maybe there's bad weather. Those are all reasons people might migrate away from their country, from where they're from their homes. And then a pull factor for migration, might be job opportunities. People wanting to look for a new life. People trying to move to a different climate. I'm sure many of you have grandparents, maybe aunts, uncles who go to Florida or Arizona or California or Texas or somewhere south for the winter months. And they're going there because they want to be in warmer weather. They don't want to deal with Minnesota winters. And so migration is the movement from one place to another. So looking at migration, here's some natural hazards in the United States. And you're going to be using this graph in an assignment here in a couple days. But using the image to the right, how might natural hazards lead to migration of people? Take a second to write an answer down. So how might natural hazards lead to migration of people? You'll know we just had a big hurricane that kind of came through the Bahamas here and into Florida. So you see, this is kind of where a lot of hurricanes are. So if you live in this area during hurricane season, you might be inclined to go move this way, go move more inward to the country. You also have some tornadoes here in the Midwest part of the country. You have some wildfires up here, but you really start to get into earthquakes and wildfires here in the West. And if you go back to I think slide number 4, where I looked at the regions of the U.S., this is almost the entire West region is filled with wildfires and earthquakes. And so those are definitely something that could push people away from their homes. But there's also up here, we don't deal with wildfires in Minnesota, but we also have our winters that are cold. We have some tornado risks. We have moderate to high tornado risk here throughout the summer months, even into the fall. And so every area across the country has some of their natural hazards. And so this could potentially lead to migration. But really anywhere you go, there's going to be something. So it's kind of, what you can tolerate and what you're maybe what you can avoid by the season. Moving on with our vocabulary words. Next one is seaport. Seaport here is a town or city that connects to the ocean. Any major city that is on an ocean would be considered a seaport. And if your maps that you did the other day, most of the highly populated cities in the United States are on a seaport. A lot of the same can be said for Canada. Not as much with Canada, but for the United States, you have most of the major cities are on a seaport. Los Angeles is on the ocean. New York City is on the ocean. Those are just a couple. And there's obviously other major cities that aren't on the ocean. But many major cities tend to be on seaports, as it gives factories and industrial jobs easier access to the ocean and to other trading partners. Then another vocab word is you have the Great Lakes. This has 5 major lakes that are combined to serve as a seaport for states and provinces, including Minnesota. And so you have the Great Lakes here. So you have Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Erie, and Lake Ontario. These connect to the St. Lawrence River. Up here you can't really see, and it actually flows into the Atlantic Ocean. So a ship that is in the harbor in Duluth over here can go through the Great Lakes, through the St. Lawrence Seaway, and can be considered a seaport because they have connection to the ocean. I'm sure many of you have been to Lake Superior before. I'm sure others have been to Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Ontario, or Lake Erie. So those are the Great Lakes. One more, climate, the weather conditions in an area over a long period of time. The weather conditions in an area over a long period of time. And then click this link and answer the 2 questions and discuss